Namaste. Today is the 10th day of August 2022, and we continue with our series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 330 at the beginning of the last paragraph.
At the same time. So, since we have this session once a week only, we are likely to forget what we have read earlier. So just a brief
summary
statement of what the chapter is about and what he is about to say. The chapter is about the indeterminable, indeterminates and determinates. This relates to the principle of the one becoming the many. And that one which is there splits itself up into many in a sequence. Just like even living cells, how they divide themselves and become so many different types of tissues in the body. So, the one is the Satchidananda. Although we speak of Satchidananda as Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda, actually it is one single thing. They are not divided. It's an integral organic oneness. It's not a collection of Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda. It's organic and it is one. And that one becomes the many in the physical world. And this is a process which does not end. It keeps on going. It is still going on. There are new products, new materials which are being created by nature. There are new species which are created by nature in the plant life, in the animal life, and so many different types of everything you can think of. Species, fishes, birds, everything. There's a continuous one becoming the many process. So, again to get back to that one, first of all it divides itself into the fundamentals, what Sri Aurobindo calls Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda and the Supermind. This being one splits itself into so many things. Sat becomes substance, and in the world, at the end product, there are so many different elements: gold, silver, platinum, oxygen, hydrogen, so many different things. The one has become the many. The one Sat is one single substance, undivided and one infinite and eternal. That becomes everything here in the physical world, the many. Similarly, consciousness also can become so many different types of consciousnesses. Mental consciousness, vital consciousness, physical consciousness, spiritual consciousness, and the consciousness of the divine. All these are the many. Then we have the power. The power also is one, but it becomes so many different things in the physical world. I am not talking of the intermediate things, but the one becomes so many different types of power. Energy. We have electrical energy, we have muscular energy, we have mechanical energy, we have chemical energy, we have nuclear energy. And there is no end to the process. Then what about Ananda? Ananda also splits itself into so many different types of Anandas. There can be a physical Ananda, there can be a vital Ananda, a mental Ananda, and Sri Aurobindo has listed all the Anandas that he has: Tivrananda, Vaidyutananda, Ahaitukananda, Heitukananda, so many different types of characteristics of Ananda. So this is basically what he's talking of in this chapter. And at the highest level, indeterminable. In the middle, at every stage, what is meant by indeterminate means it cannot be determined by features, characteristics, color, shape, form. These things are missing or at least less. If we take any one in the middle, the one immediately, the one above it which is originating it is the indeterminate, and it produces a determinate. Just like as I said, molten metal can create plates and wires and whatnot. Then that again can be molded into so many things. Plates can be made into vessels. It can be made into jugs. It can be made into plates. It can be made into spoons. So this process goes on. So now what he is talking about is Sat, Chit, Shakti we have decided. Now he is going to tell you how knowledge, consciousness in this spreads itself. This is what we are going to read today. This is the background. Now, at the same time, we are on page 330 and towards the end of the page. At the same time, indeterminability is also a necessary element in our conception of the absolute, because the divine is infinite and eternal. If he has got features, then he is limited. So therefore, he must have a one particular stage, maybe at the highest level, where he has no features at all. Otherwise, he can't be infinite. So the moment you have features, you are defining it and you are determining it. So that's what he's saying here. At the same time, indeterminability is also a necessary element in our conception of the absolute. If we think of the absolute as infinite, it must be at one time, he cannot be restricted to any one determinates or any determinate features. That's what is meaning. So necessarily you have to think of the divine as infinite and indeterminable. And in our spiritual experience also, not only conception but spiritual experience also, this is constantly keeps on saying. Logic demands that your conception of him must be indeterminability. At the same time, you must be able to experience it. It's not only a question of the mental knowledge, but it must also be a spiritual fact. That's what he's saying. This is the other side of the supramental regard, regard on beings and on things. On beings, that means creatures, and on things. The absolute is not limitable or definable by any one determination or by any sum of determinations. It's not that the divine can be said to be, oh, he is this, he is this, he is this, he is perfect, he is all-knowing, he is all-powerful, he is omnipresent. That's not, it's not a sum. It is something much more than the sum. Just like our body is not a sum of liver, heart, lungs, veins and bones. We are much more than that. We are an organic whole which takes care of all these things. So it's not a summation, it's a organic whole. That's what he's saying. Our body is certainly not the summation of all our organs, much more than that. Okay, so that's what he's saying. He's saying the absolute is not limitable or definable by any one determination or any sum, even the sum is not enough, of determinations. On the other side, it is not bound down to any indeterminable vacancy of pure existence. Does that mean that necessarily the divine is limited to his unlimitedness? That's what he's saying. He says it is not so. He is free to take limitations and he is free to become unlimited. That's the nature of the physical world. Okay, so look at the word, very interesting. He is not bound down to an indeterminate vacancy of pure existence. He is not vacant. He is not absolutely nihil, okay? Which is the conception of certain, the Buddhist conception is there, the Mayavada conception is there. It is not like that. On the contrary, it is a source of all determinations. It itself produces all the determinations. Exactly like to understand this principle is very easy, the tree and the seed. If you blow up the seed, you will not see leaves in it, you will not see fruits in it, leaves, flower, fruits, you won't see all these things. And yet it has the capacity to produce all these things. These are the determinations, but the seed itself is indeterminate of all these features. Yet it has the capacity to produce all these things. So that's exactly the nature of the divine. If you look at him, he seems to be free of everything. Yet he is capable of tying himself down to features and characteristics. Okay? So, on the contrary, it is source of all determinations. Its indeterminability is the natural, the necessary condition, both of its infinity of being and its infinity of power of being. So, not only of being, which is substance, but also power. Okay? It can be infinitely all things, because it is no thing in particular and exceeds any definable totality. So definable totality even. That earlier he said some. He is not a summation of everything that is possible in the world. If you say this, I go on, adding everything, you'll never exhaust it. He is much more than all that.
I think it's in the synthesis where he says, all that is he.
Yes.
And he is the more than all that is.
Yes, that's right. That's what he's saying here. Okay? Infinity. So, this infinity extends to substance, which is being, and power also. It can be infinitely all things, because it is no thing in particular and exceeds any definable totality. It is this essential indeterminability of the Absolute that translates itself into our consciousness through the fundamental negating positives of our spiritual experience. Now, the negating positives of our spiritual experience. And what is that? The immobile, immutable self. It's a positive, but you are limiting him to a immobile, immutable self. There is a spiritual experience where you enter into a consciousness which is immutable, the self. Okay? And people think that that's the ultimate reality. In spiritual experience, so convincing. But he is not limiting himself only to that. That's the whole point. That's what the Mayavadins make an error. That's where the Buddhists also make an error. Okay? That they think that this is the ultimate. Why do they think it's the ultimate? Because it is so satisfying that you feel, this is the best. Because you are released from suffering, you are released from limitation, you are released from incapacity, and you are released also from all negative things. All your wrong thoughts and all this come out, and you feel yourself to be absolutely free. That's a mukti. Liberation. Or, what is it? Salvation is the word they use also in Christianity. Salvation. So, that is the reason why they get stuck there. But there are spiritual giants like Sri Aurobindo who say that wait. It's a negative absolute. It can't be. So I want something, a positive absolute. I don't want a negative absolute. So that's what he's saying here. On the contrary, it is a source of all determinations. Its indeterminability is a natural, the necessary condition both of its infinity of being and its infinity of power of being. It can be intimately all things because it is no thing in particular and exceeds any definable totality. It is this essential indeterminability of the Absolute that translates itself into our consciousness which is limited, through the fundamental negating positives of our spiritual experience. And what are they? The immobile, immutable self, the nirguna Brahman, nirguna, featureless. You experience the self as featureless. No color, no form, no shape, nothing. Absolutely free of all characteristics. So that's what he's saying. So the description is, it's a negative positive. It's a negative positive. So what would be the positive? We will come to that. Okay. So, of our spiritual experience, the immobile, immutable self, the nirguna Brahman, the eternal without quality, the pure, featureless one existence, the impersonal, the silence, void of activities, the non-being, the ineffable, and the unknowable. He has taken the trouble of giving you 10 adjectives where he is saying there are no adjectives possible there. Okay, so just see. He is saying it's a negating positive. And what is it? Immobile, immutable self. Absolutely static, infinite, eternal. The nirguna, no qualities at all, qualityless. Okay. Brahman, the eternal, without qualities. Okay. In describing it, he is also describing the negativity, but it's also a positive. That's what the fun is. Okay. So, the pure, featureless one. So, pure, featureless one, existence. the impersonal, the silence, void of activities, the non-being, the ineffable, and the unknowable. So he has added the non-being because it seems to be nothing at all. Okay. So this can be interpreted as something seemingly non-existent but can produce all existences. Normally, to explain to the children, I give this image, okay, of a glass of water on your table. Okay, it's absolutely pure, without any dirt, nothing, and it is absolutely without any movement at all, no impurity in it. Now, in your consciousness, make that glass larger, 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 the water is there in it, and now in your consciousness, that glass has extended itself to infinity. Now, such an extent that you don't see the glass at all. What are you seeing? If you say nothing, you are a Buddhist. If you say it is seeming to be a nothing which is full of all possibilities, you are a Vedantin. That's the thing. So, this is the essential indeterminability of the Absolute that translates itself into our consciousness through fundamental negative positives of our spiritual experience. He has described, and he says, non-being, the ineffable and the unknowable. On the other side, it is the essence and source of all determinations. It is itself capable of producing all characteristics, features, limitations. And this dynamic essentiality manifests to us through the fundamental affirming positives. There you are now, the affirming positives, in which the Absolute equally meets us. And that's a Saguna aspect, the Nirguna aspect and the Saguna aspect. With all the qualities, the Divine has all the qualities. And what is that? For it is the Self that becomes all things, the Saguna Brahman, the eternal with infinite qualities, the one who is the many, the infinite person who is the source and foundation of all persons and personalities, the Lord of creation, the Word, the master of all works and action. It is this that which being known, it is that which being known, all is known. Yasmin vijjate sarvam vijjatam. If you know this, everything else is known. So, he is talking of this supermind, where the personal aspect of the Divine and the impersonal aspect of the Divine all merge, and although you are one, you understand all the many also. So, everything is perfectly synthesized and harmonized. There is no fundamental antinomy between all these things. In the physical world, we see the many, we don't see the oneness. In the spiritual planes of consciousness, which we call level 2, you are in a spiritual consciousness, you see the oneness, but you see the physical world, all the many as unreal. You go to the third level, and there you see that he is everything. He is real, unreal, one, many, everything. There is no disharmony at all. Although you see the many, there is a perfect harmony. We are seeing the many, but there is a disharmony in the physical world. But at the highest level, you see the many, but they are in perfect harmony. The example usually given is that of an orchestra. 100 pieces, all playing different things. Someone is producing a sound, someone is flute, and even sometimes different tunes, but all in perfect harmony. So the one need not translate itself into the many where there is only clash and disharmony. There is also a condition where it can be absolutely harmonious. And that's where it is going. Evolution is going towards that point. Okay? On the other side is the essence. So now he is talking of the affirming positives, in which the Absolute equally meets us. For it is the Self that becomes all things, the Saguna Brahman, the eternal with infinite qualities. One who is the many, the infinite person, who is the source and foundation of all persons and personalities, the Lord of creation, the Word. We have to go a little into what is the Word. Okay, so the master of all works and action. It is that which, being known, all is known. The Sanskrit equivalent, as we just now said, Yasmin Vijjate Sarvam Vijjatam. That which is known, all is known. The master of all works, etc. Now, what is this word? The word usually, the word is used for expressing the capacity of manifestation. The one becomes the many by the power of manifestation. Why is that word used in this sense? Because suppose I have a thought in my mind. I don't express it. It remains unmanifested. But if I have to manifest my thought and others see that and understand what I am thinking, I have to use language. I have to use words. So when I use a word, I am manifesting that which is unmanifest in my mind. That's why the word is the power of creation, the power of manifestation.
In the beginning was the Word.
That's right.
And the Word was made flesh.
Yes. That's why it is used in this sense, the word. Okay? So, for it is not possible in a supramental cognition to split asunder the two sides of the one existence. Even to speak of them as sides is excessive, for they are in each other. Their coexistence or one existence is eternal, and their powers sustaining each other found the self-manifestation of the infinite. This truth of immutability and mutability being essentially absorbed into one another, depending on which level you are, can be repeated in many, many different ways. Okay, we'll have a look at that. Okay, it is worthwhile. They are really always involved with each other. You can speak of it as saguna, nirguna. Okay, in the infinite impersonality, there is personality also. In the person, okay, I am now a person, but the impersonal is in me, the immanent aspect. The divine has three aspects: transcendent, outside the universe, in the universe, universal, cosmic, and the individual. These are the three levels he enters into, and he is there everywhere. So, there is the famous, this is a very interesting concept, so we'll look at it in detail. It's really worth looking at. Time and timelessness, they are also involved in each other. Okay, the infinite and the finite are also involved in each other to the extent of infinitesimal. Okay, so the infinitesimal is the atom, right? But the infinite has condensed itself into the atom, just like matter is the condensation of everything above it. Just it is like a Russian doll, as I said, each one by one, it puts itself into and involves itself in the, so it is always there. This also translates as rest and movement. They are also always the same. So, rest and movement are involved in each other. We'll look at each of these one by one, okay? First, let's think of the infinite and the infinitesimal. I go back to that famous quote of William Blake, okay? To see a world in a grain of sand. The whole world can be contained in a grain of sand, okay? And to see
and hold heaven.
And heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. So this gives you the infinitesimal and the infinite are involved in each other. Number one. Number two, even the human being, he has the divine within him, and the divine is infinite. I am finite, but I have and that's why I can become the cosmic consciousness I can get. So that is another way of looking at it. What about rest and action? Okay, that's very interesting. Time and timelessness. Okay, that can be very interestingly if you look at the clock. Okay, look at the clock and think of the second hand. It is resting and moving every second. It is resting and moving. When it is moving 1 second, my perceptions will tell me, oh, it is resting, oh, it is moving, oh, it is resting, oh, it is moving. But now they are really the same. How? Reduce that to half a second. Reduce that to 1/4 of a second. Reduce that to 1/1,000,000th of a second. There is rest and there is movement, but you will see only movement. So in the movement there is rest.
When Mother says, unless you understand that Sri Aurobindo and I are one,
Yes.
can you?
That's what I was going to come to next. Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha and Prakriti also are involved in each other. Consciousness and power. Okay. Now look at the physical world. Look at matter. Powerful. Consciousness is there, but we don't see it. It is inactive. It is there lying potent. Come to the self. Consciousness is 100%. Immutability, no power. So they are always involved in each other and seem to be opposite to each other. But they are always together. Purusha and Prakriti are always together. Rest and action are always together. The infinite and the finite are always together. The whole world is one complex web of all these things.
No, I have read where Sri Aurobindo says, in the formless, form is already there.
That's right. That again can be understood by the seed and the tree. Okay.
Yeah.
All the forms, the leaves, the fruits, the flowers are all there in the formless in the seed. And that's also the principle of our own body also. In the chromosomes, all the characteristics of the color of your skin, your bone structure, your muscle tissue, everything, cartilage tissue, everything is there, characterized, and it is there. And now it is possible even to do genetic engineering at that level. So this is how they are involved in each other. So Saguna and Nirguna, they can be experienced separately, but they are really one. So one should not get confused. That's what they are saying here in this para. Okay? So, and I'm reading that last sentence again, which we have discussed just now. For it is not possible in a supramental cognition, not our cognition, supramental cognition, to split asunder the two sides of the one existence. Even to speak of them as sides is excessive. The Saguna and the Nirguna, the qualityless and the qualitied, Purusha, Prakriti. You can't even speak of them as two separate things becoming one. They are absolutely one. Even to speak of them as sides is excessive, for they are in each other. Their coexistence or one existence is eternal, and their powers sustaining each other, the self-manifestation of the infinite. Okay? So, determinability and indeterminability also fits into this picture. All that is indeterminable at our level contains all the determinates. The indeterminate contains the determinates. And this process is endless. It goes on and on and on and on. Okay. Like if you take life for instance, okay, life is something general which contains all forms of life. It can be vegetable life, it can be animal life. Okay. Now if you take only the animal life, science divides into two, vertebrates and invertebrates. And the vertebrates are divided usually into again 5 classes. Our conceptions go on changing. So this is what I had learned in school. Okay, mammals, fish, amphibians, birds, and what else? There are 5 categories. Okay, then take only mammals. They can become dogs, they can become cats, they can become horses, they can become so many different types. Now take only horses. They can also become so many different types of horses, so many different types of dogs. Pomeranians, Alsatians, whatnot. You go on and on. So this process is continuous. Nature is going on, producing things. It has not yet exhausted itself. It has got infinity to do it. It's in no hurry at all. So, but neither is the separate cognition of them entirely an illusion or a complete error of the ignorance. This too has its validity for spiritual experience. We'll discuss this later. For these primary aspects of the Absolute are fundamental spiritual determinates or indeterminates, answering at the spiritual end or beginning to the general determinates or generic indeterminates of the material end or inconscient beginning of the descending and ascending manifestation. Those that seem to us negative carry in them the freedom of the infinite from limitation by its own determinations. Their realization disengages the spirit within, liberates us, and enables us to participate in this supremacy. Thus, when once we pass into or through the experience of immutable self, we are no longer bound and limited in the inner status of our being by the determinations and creations of nature. On the other, the dynamic side, this original freedom enables the consciousness to create a world of determinations without being bound by it. It enables it also to withdraw from what it has created and recreate in a higher truth formula. It is on this freedom that is based the Spirit's power of infinite variation of the truth possibilities of existence, and also its capacity to create, without tying itself to its workings, any and every form of necessity or system of order. The individual being too, by experience of these negating absolutes, can participate in that dynamic liberty, can pass from one order of self-formulation to a higher order. At the stage when from the mental it has to move towards its supramental status, one most liberatingly helpful, if not indispensable experience that may intervene, is the entry into a total nirvana of mentality and mental ego, a passage into the silence of the spirit. In any case, a realization of the pure self must always precede the transition to that mediating eminence of the consciousness from which a clear vision of the ascending and descending stairs of manifested existence is commanded, and the possession of the free power of ascent and descent becomes a spiritual prerogative. An independent completeness of identity with each of the primal aspects and powers, not narrowing as in the mind into a soul engrossing experience seeming to be final and integral, for that would be incompatible with the realization of the unity of all aspects and powers of existence, is a capacity inherent in consciousness in the infinite. That indeed is the base and justification of the overmind cognition and its will to carry each aspect, each power, each possibility to its independent fullness. But the supermind keeps always and in every status or condition the spiritual realization of the unity of all. The intimate presence of that unity is there even within the completest grasp of each thing, each state given its whole delight of itself, power and value. There is thus no losing sight of the affirmative aspects, even when there is the full acceptance of the truth of the negative. The overmind keeps still this sense of this underlying unity. That is for it the secure base of the independent experience. In mind, the knowledge of the unity of all aspects is lost on the surface. The consciousness is plunged into engrossing, exclusive, separate affirmations. But there too, even in the mind's ignorance, the total reality still remains behind the exclusive absorption and can be recovered in the form of a profound mental intuition or else in the idea or sentiment of an underlying truth of integral oneness. In the spiritual mind, this can develop into an ever-present experience. A very big para. What we can do, we'll first read a summary of what he's saying. Okay? So then we have a total picture, and then we go into details. Okay? It's very useful to do that, I find. So I'll try and give you the summary of what he's saying here. Okay? So what is he saying here? The determinations of the cosmos are not an illusion. He is negating the Buddhistic theory and the Mayavada theory. They are not an illusion. Okay, the first thing. A complete error of ignorance. Okay, they are not an illusion, a complete error of ignorance. They are not also a complete ignorance. Okay, they have their significance and meaning in the total reality. He'll explain to you why. So when the Mayavadan is saying that the physical world is illusion, he is not 100% wrong. He is not 100% right either, but he is seeing one aspect of the divine. Okay. And what is that aspect? Don't think that what you are seeing with limited forms is the only thing. There can be an unlimited thing also. That's the first thing. So he is saying they have their significance and meaning in the total reality. They are symbols and images of the Supreme Absolute. So, normally we explain this illusion thing in this way. You are there and there is a photograph of you. Which is more real? Obviously, you are more real than your photograph. But isn't your photograph some sort of reality reflecting you? So, that's what the world is. The world is an image. It's a photograph of, but it's only a piece of paper. And yet it is representing you. So in that sense, the world is only forms, but they are not absolutely unreal. They represent the divine. So they have their significance and meaning in the total reality. They are symbols and images of the Supreme Absolute. The Supreme Absolute is the indeterminable, which creates the determinations, the features of the cosmos. So there is a Supreme Absolute, itself indeterminable, and it creates the determinations of the features of the cosmos. That we have discussed just now. The seed itself does not contain all the details, but it can produce it. At the lower end, the inconscient is also an indeterminable, albeit a dark and dense infinite, indeterminable, from which springs up all the forms of the evolution. So, the inconscient also holds everything in itself. And it is going on producing one by one. It produces first life, it produces life in the form of trees, and then it produces animals, and then it produces higher and higher forms of life. Okay? At the lower end, the inconscient is also an indeterminable, albeit a dark and dense infinite indeterminable, from which springs up all the forms of the evolution. Between the two are the determinates and the indeterminate above. So, there is the indeterminable at the highest level, full of light. There is an indeterminable at the lowest level, full of darkness. And in between, a combination of all these in graded substance. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, in other words, very clear. The animal has got knowledge, but it is inferior to man. His knowledge is inferior to man. In matter, there is no knowledge at all. Take a worm. Its consciousness is less than that of a cat. Even in the animal world, a chimpanzee or a dolphin is more intelligent than a cat. Okay, they have got tremendous intelligence. Come to a man, he is even more intelligent than this. Come to a yogi, he is even more intelligent. So there are grades of determinability and combination of all these things. So the higher you go, the more infinite and the more indeterminable, and the lower you come, the more determinate, the more fixed, and the more formed. That's what he's saying.
When he said the overmind contains all of this.
Yeah, we'll come to that.
Yeah.
He's mentioning that.
Yeah.
Okay? So, then he says, the indeterminates express to man the freedom of the Absolute from its own creations. So, when you experience the self, the immutable self, why do you have to Why do you have to experience that? Because in the physical world, when we see forms, we feel, this is the reality. So God is telling, get rid of your nonsensical idea. This is not the... Go to the self and see that it is not true. So that's why you have the immutable. So that's what he's saying. The indeterminates express to man the freedom of the Absolute from its own creations. It is creating the form, but I am not stuck in them. Like the artist. Something of the artist comes out in his painting or his poem, but he is not stuck to that. He can produce another one. He is also free. That's what he's saying. From its own creations, fixities and rigidities of the cosmos. The determinates express to man the infinite possibilities, the infinite aspects of the Supreme Absolute. When you see forms, then you understand that the infinite formless can become all these forms. There is no end to the process. There is not only one dog. There can be 100,000 types of dogs, 100,000 types of different things. Okay, this applies to everything. The determinates express to man the infinite possibilities, aspects of the Supreme Absolute, which is the seed that contains all the determinables in its womb. That is the validity of the nirvana experience, when the mind silences itself and the consciousness climbs into the freedom of the spirit. The main idea of the immutability is the freedom from form. Your soul is stuck in the body-mind life and it's a prisoner. When it comes out, it feels that, I am really free. I am not bound at all to my body-mind life. I am much more than my body, my mind and my life. So the experience is justifiable because God is telling you, your first impression is wrong. But don't get stuck there again, because there also you get stuck, that also is wrong. So where is the right? Absolute at the highest level. That's why Srivamda wants a supermind. Okay? That is the validity of the nirvana experience, where the mind silences itself and the consciousness climbs into the freedom of the spirit. But the supermind holds in itself both the static and the dynamic, the nirguna and the saguna. This is what he is saying. It contains all. In between, there is this gradation. That's what he is saying in the para.